house on Bellamy Street sat between two boarded-up row homes in a forgotten corner of the city. Everyone in the neighborhood called it the breathing house. No one knew who built it. No one knew why the windows were always open, even in winter. But people swore the house inhaled when the sun went down and exhaled when the streetlights flickered on. Malik first noticed it the summer he moved in with his aunt. The block was loud most nights. Sirens, bass from old cars, people yelling across stoops. But the house at 314 stayed silent. Too silent. The kind of silence that made your ears ring. One night, Malik was walking home from the corner store when he heard something strange. A slow dragging sound from inside the house, like furniture being pulled across the floor. Then came a whisper through the broken screen door. Malik. He froze. The voice was soft but clear. Too clear. The problem was he had never told anyone on the block his name. He told himself someone was playing a trick, maybe kids hiding inside. But the front door slowly creaked open by itself. Inside, the hallway was dark and stretched farther than it should have. Much farther than the outside of the house allowed. The whisper came again. Malik, come inside. It's lonely here. The house smelled like wet wood and something rotten. The walls were covered with old photographs. People from the neighborhood, some smiling, some crying, some missing. Malik leaned closer to one photo and his stomach dropped. It was a picture of him, taken earlier that night at the corner store. Standing behind him in the photo was a tall shadow with arms too long and fingers like wires. The door slammed behind him. He spun around and grabbed the knob. It wouldn't move. From upstairs came footsteps, slow, heavy. One step, then another. Then the breathing started, a deep inhale that made the walls stretch. A long, rattling exhale that made the floorboards sink beneath his shoes. Malik ran for the hallway, but the corridor kept growing longer. The more he ran, the farther the exit moved. The lights flickered and every photograph on the wall began to change. In each picture, the shadow behind him was getting closer. He heard it descending the stairs now, each step cracking the wood, each breath louder. The whisper was no longer soft. You shouldn't have come in. Malik finally reached the end of the hall and burst into the living room. But the room wasn't empty anymore. The walls were covered with hundreds of photos now. Every missing person from the neighborhood, every kid who vanished, every man who was never found, and in every single picture, the same tall shadow stood behind them. Malik slowly turned around. The thing filled the hallway. Its head bent sideways to fit beneath the ceiling. Its fingers scraped the walls, leaving black marks like burns. When it spoke, the entire house inhaled with it. The house remembers everyone who enters. The lights went out. The next morning, the people on Bellamy Street noticed something new inside the broken front window. There was another photograph on the wall. A boy holding a plastic bag from the corner store. And behind him, a tall shadow smiling with teeth that stretched far too wide. The photograph of Malik hung crooked on the living room wall, beside dozens of others. The house was quiet again. But the quiet inside the breathing house was never the kind that meant peace. It was the kind that waited. Nights passed on Bellamy Street. People still heard the same things they always had. Sirens cutting through the humid air, distant gunshots, music rumbling from car trunks. But sometimes, when the street went still, something else could be heard coming from number 314. A long inhale, then a slow, tired exhale, like the building itself had lungs. The neighborhood kids dared each other to run up the cracked walkway and touch the front door. Most never made it past the gate. Those who did said the wood of the house felt warm, warm like skin. 1 week after Malik disappeared, his Aunt Keisha sat on her porch, staring at the place. She hadn't slept in days. The police said Malik probably ran away. They always said that when kids from this neighborhood vanished. But Keisha knew Malik. He wouldn't leave without his phone, without his shoes, without saying goodbye. She kept remembering the last thing he said before he walked to the store. "I'll be back in 5 minutes." 5 minutes had turned into 7 days. That night the air was thick, and the streetlight across from the breathing house flickered like it was nervous. Keisha noticed something she hadn't seen before. A faint glow behind the living room window. She stood up slowly. At first she thought it was a television, but the light wasn't moving like a screen. It was pulsing. With every pulse came a sound. Inhale, exhale. Keisha walked across the street. Before she even reached the steps, she heard something faint from inside. A voice. She stopped. Her heart slammed against her ribs. The voice was weak, scratching, like someone talking through dirt. "Auntie." Her breath caught. "Malik." She rushed to the door and pounded on it. "Malik. Baby, are you in there?" The house inhaled. The door slowly opened. An icy draft slid across the porch. Keisha hesitated for only a second. Then she stepped inside. The door shut behind her with a wet thud. The hallway stretched before her, just like a normal hallway would. But the air inside felt wrong. Thick, warm, alive. The smell of mildew and something older filled her lungs. "Malik," her voice echoed in strange directions. The walls were covered with photographs. She stepped closer to one and her stomach twisted. She recognized faces from the block. Terrence, who disappeared in 2018. Little Jamal, who vanished walking home from school. An old man named Mr. Rodriguez, who used to feed stray cats. All of them smiling, frozen in dusty frames. And behind every single one of them was a shadow. Keisha turned slowly and saw it. Malik's picture. He was holding a plastic bag from the store. His eyes were wide with terror, and behind him stood something tall and warped. She backed away. No, the floor creaked upstairs. Footsteps. One step, then another. The breathing got louder. Inhale. The walls bulged slightly like something huge was filling them. Exhale. The hallway shrank again. Keisha ran to the door and grabbed the knob. It wouldn't turn. She slammed her shoulder into it. Nothing. The footsteps above her continued. Heavy. Deliberate. She could hear nails dragging across the wood with every step. "Malik," she screamed. The whisper returned from somewhere deep in the house. "He's still here." Keisha spun around. Where? The whisper slid along the walls. Everywhere. Suddenly, every photograph in the hallway trembled. The glass rattled. Then all the pictures tilted at the same time, pointing toward the staircase. The breathing deepened. Inhale. Exhale. The staircase was darker than the rest of the house. Keisha climbed it slowly. The wood groaned like it was protesting each step. Halfway up, she heard something faint. Scratching from inside the walls. And voices. Hundreds of voices layered together. Whispers, whimpers, cries. Some begging, some praying, some screaming silently behind plaster. She reached the top. The hallway upstairs was impossibly long. Doors lined both sides, but each door had something carved into it. dozens more. Some of the carvings were fresh. She approached the door labeled Malik. The wood was warm. Her hand shook as she turned the knob. The room inside was empty, except for walls covered in photographs. In the center of the room stood Malik. He wasn't moving. He faced the wall, staring at a picture of himself. Malik. He didn't respond. She stepped closer. "Baby, it's me." Slowly, he turned around. His eyes were wrong. They were dark and glossy like wet glass. "Auntie, you shouldn't have come." His voice sounded layered, like something else was speaking underneath him. The house inhaled. The walls of the room expanded outward, like lungs filling. Malik's body jerked suddenly. His arms snapped upward unnaturally. He began walking toward her in stiff puppet-like steps. It doesn't like when people try to leave. Keisha grabbed him and pulled him toward the door. "We're getting out of here." But Malik stopped moving. His feet refused to slide across the floor, like something underneath the boards was holding him in place. Then the breathing stopped. The silence was worse than the sound. The entire house went still. Every photograph in the room turned at once. All the faces now looked at the doorway. Something tall was standing there. It had unfolded itself from the darkness of the hallway. Its head brushed the ceiling. Its limbs were too long, bending in places joints shouldn't exist. Its skins looked like stretched wallpaper covered in faint moving faces. And its mouth was a long rip across its head, filled with crooked teeth made of splinters. When it breathed again, the entire room inhaled with it. Malik whispered without moving his lips, "It found you." The creature tilted its head. The house exhaled, and every photograph on the wall suddenly changed. In each picture now, Keisha was standing inside the frame, behind her. The shadow was reaching forward. Keisha couldn't move. The thing in the doorway folded itself lower, its head bending sideways like wet cardboard, so it could fit beneath the frame. The hallway behind it stretched into a darkness that seemed deeper than the night outside. The house inhaled again, and the walls swelled slightly, as if the entire building were filling with air before speaking. "You are not supposed to take them back," the thing said, its voice like wood splitting in winter. Malik's body twitched beside her. His feet were still rooted to the floor. His eyes flickered between fear and something else. Something tired. "Auntie," he whispered, barely moving his mouth. "Don't fight it." Keisha grabbed his shoulders and shook him. "We're leaving." The creature stepped into a room. The floor groaned under its weight, though its body looked thin as stretched cloth. As it moved, the faces under its skin shifted, dozens of expressions pressing outward like they were trapped beneath glass. Some were screaming, some were crying, some looked blank and hollow. Keisha saw one she recognized. Mr. Rodriguez. His mouth opened silently inside the creature's arm. She staggered back in horror. The house exhaled. Every photo in the room rattled. The creature raised one long finger toward the wall. The photographs began to move. Slowly, like old film rewinding, the images changed. They showed moments from the street outside. Kids playing basketball in the cracked court. A woman carrying groceries. A man fixing his car. Then each picture showed the same moment. The person walking past the breathing house. And behind them, in the reflection of the window, or in the shadow on the sidewalk, the tall shape was already there, watching, waiting. Keisha's chest tightened. "You've been taking people," she said. The creature's head tilted further until its neck made a wet snapping sound. "No," it replied. "They come inside." Malik's fingers trembled. "It's true," he said softly. "Everyone hears it eventually." Keisha looked at him. "Here's what." The house inhaled. The whisper came from the walls, the floor, the ceiling, everywhere at once. Soft. Patient. "Your name." Keisha felt a cold wave move through her spine. Malik continued, his voice distant. "At night, when you pass by, it calls you. Just once. If you answer, it opens the door." The creature stepped closer now. The ceiling cracked slightly as its shoulders brushed against it. Dust drifted down like gray snow. "They are lonely," the creature said calmly, pointing one thin arm toward the faces inside its skin. "The house remembers them. The house keeps them." Suddenly, a violent pounding shook the front door downstairs. All three froze. Another pounding, loud, angry. A man's voice shouted from outside. "Keisha, you in there?" It was Darnell from across the street. Keisha's heart jumped. "Darnell," she screamed instinctively. The creature's head snapped toward the stairs. For the first time, its calm expression twisted slightly. The house inhaled sharply. The staircase cracked as something shifted within the walls. Darnell's voice shouted again. "Hold on, I'm coming in." The front door burst open downstairs. Light from the street poured into the hallway below. Footsteps rushed inside, then stopped. Darnell's voice lowered into confusion. "Yo, why this hallway so long?" The creature turned slowly toward Keisha. "You called another." Its mouth widened. Keisha grabbed Malik's arm and pulled. "Run!" This time his feet moved. They sprinted toward the hallway upstairs behind the creature, racing down the endless corridor of carved doors. Behind them, the thing unfolded its limbs and began to follow. It did not run. It simply stepped. Yet each step covered impossible distance. The breathing grew louder again. Inhale. The hallway stretched. Exhale. It shrank. Malik yanked open random doors as they passed. Inside each room were more photographs, more walls breathing slowly, more echoes of trapped voices. Then they heard Darnell screaming downstairs. Not words, just pure terror. The creature paused mid-hallway, its head tilting as if listening. The house inhaled deeply. The scream cut off. The house exhaled slowly. Malik's face went pale. Too late. From the far end of the hallway, a new door appeared, where there hadn't been one before. The wood was fresh and wet-looking. Slowly, letters carved themselves into it. D-R-L-L. The creature resumed walking. The distance between it and them shrank with each breath. Keisha spotted a window at the end of the corridor. Moonlight leaked through the cracked glass. There, they ran. The floor beneath them felt soft now, like damp soil instead of wood. The walls pulsed on both sides, faint handprints pressing outward from inside the plaster. Malik reached the window first and shoved it open. Cold night air rushed in. "Jump!" Keisha climbed out onto the narrow roof ledge. But Malik froze again. She turned. His body had locked stiff once more. The creature was right behind him now, filling the hallway with its tall, crooked shape. "He belongs to the house," it said gently. Keisha grabbed Malik's arm and pulled with all her strength. For a moment he moved. One foot slid toward the window. Then dozens of hands suddenly pushed out from the walls, gray, dusty hands clawing through the plaster. They grabbed Malik's legs, his waist, his shoulders. Malik screamed. He reached toward her desperately until only his fingers remained visible. Then they vanished. The wall sealed itself again. Silence. The creature turned its attention to Keisha, standing on the window ledge outside. The house inhaled. The walls bulged outward as if trying to reach her even beyond the window. "You may leave," it said calmly, "but you will hear it again." Keisha didn't wait. She jumped from the roof to the yard below and hit the ground hard, pain exploding through her ankle. She scrambled up and ran across Bellamy Street without looking back. But behind her, from inside the house, came the slow, familiar sound. Inhale, exhale, and faintly, carried on the night air, came Malik's voice from somewhere deep inside the walls. "Auntie." But when the police arrived the next morning, number 314 Bellamy Street looked empty again. The hallway was short. The rooms were bare. No photographs, no broken walls, no sign anyone had been inside. Except for one thing. On the living room wall hung two brand new pictures. One showed Malik staring at the wall upstairs. The other showed Darnell standing in the doorway, and in both photographs, behind them, the tall shadow was smiling. The house inhaled quietly, waiting for the next voice to answer when it whispered a name in the dark. Keisha didn't sleep for 3 nights after escaping the house. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard it again. That slow breathing. Inhale, exhale, and sometimes, in the quiet moments between midnight and morning, she heard something worse. A whisper sliding through the dark of her apartment. "Keisha." The first time it happened, she shot upright in bed and turned on every light in the room. Nothing was there. The windows were closed. The hallway outside her door was empty. But the air in the apartment felt wrong. Warm. Heavy. The same way the breathing house had felt. She told herself it was in her head. Trauma. People from the neighborhood said the same thing when they heard what happened. Some believed her, some didn't. But everyone agreed on one thing. No one went near 314 Bellamy Street anymore. Even during the day, people crossed to the other side of the road when they walked past it. The house sat quietly like it always had. Its windows open, its door closed, and sometimes, late at night, the porch light flickered, even though there had never been electricity connected to the place. A week passed, then another. The police investigation went nowhere. They searched the house twice, brought dogs, brought equipment, tore up floorboards. They found nothing. No secret rooms, no tunnels, no photographs, just dust and cracked wood. But the officers who searched it said something strange afterward. They all complained about the same thing. They swore they heard breathing inside the walls. One officer quit 2 days later. He told his partner the house whispered his name while he was inside. Keisha tried to move on. She tried to convince herself Malik was gone, that nothing inside that house could be changed. But every night the whisper returned. Keisha. Sometimes it sounded like Malik. Sometimes it sounded like something deeper. One night around 2:30 a.m., she heard a different voice layered into the whisper. "Darnell's, help us." She froze in bed. The room felt smaller. The air felt thicker. And then the breathing started again. Inhale. The walls of her apartment creaked. Exhale. The floor beneath her feet shifted slightly. Keisha grabbed her phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam swept across the room. Everything looked normal. until she pointed the light toward the hallway. The paint on the wall was moving. At first, she thought it was her eyes playing tricks, but then a handprint pushed outward slowly from beneath the paint, like something trapped underneath the drywall. The whisper came again, clearer this time. "You left us here." More handprints appeared pressing from inside the walls. Faint faces formed in the plaster, blurred shapes trying to push through. Keisha stumbled backward. No. No. The breathing grew louder. The apartment lights flickered. Then suddenly, silence. The walls went still. The handprints faded. The air felt normal again. Keisha stood there shaking for a long time before she realized something else had changed. Her phone screen had turned off, but she hadn't touched it when it lit up again by itself. There was a new photo in her gallery. She hadn't taken it. The image showed the living room of the breathing house, the walls covered in photographs, and in the center of the room stood Malik. He was staring directly at the camera, his mouth slightly open like he was trying to speak. Behind him, the tall creature stood with its head bent sideways, and in the reflection of the glass frame, Keisha was visible too, as if she had been standing inside the house when the picture was taken. Her hands started shaking uncontrollably. Then her phone buzzed again. A new message appeared. No number, no contact, just a picture attached. She opened it. It was the hallway upstairs in the breathing house, the carved doors stretching endlessly into darkness. One of the doors was different. It was freshly carved. The name on it read Keisha. Her blood ran cold. The phone buzzed again. Another photo. This one showed the front door of the house, open, the dark hallway waiting, and at the bottom of the image was a message typed in plain white text. "Come back." The breathing sound returned in her apartment. Inhale, exhale, and this time, the whisper was no longer distant. It was right behind her. "We saved a room for you." Slowly, Keisha turned around, and for a split second, she saw the hallway of the breathing house stretching across the wall of her apartment, like a doorway that didn't belong there. Doors lined both sides, carved names everywhere, and at the far end of the hallway, the tall creature stood watching her. It didn't move. It didn't speak. It just waited. Then the walls snapped back to normal. The hallway vanished. The apartment was silent again. But Keisha understood something now. The house didn't just sit on Bellamy Street anymore. It had learned how to breathe somewhere else, and somewhere inside its endless hallways. Malik and the others were still alive, waiting for someone to answer when the house whispered their name again in the dark.